All right, it's time to talk with our featured guest, Danya Montoya. Danya, how's it going?
Hey, it's always good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. If you don't mind us asking, where are you located right now?
Right now, I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana. This is my home office.
That's not, how often do you travel? Like how much in a year?
Well, before COVID, it was about 50 weeks a year. But since COVID, everybody, all of the consultants have had kind of a little shift, and we've all learned how to do things from home a little bit. Right now, I'm traveling, once or twice a month to my teams. And last week, I was with Urban Dental in Houston, Texas. I know you're
Huh?
from Texas.
Yeah. Houston, Texas. I like it out there. So then how has that, and we're gonna get into it a little bit more, but I'm just curious to know, like, do you feel like there's been a big shift in the way you teach and stuff like that because of online or not really?
What I really have felt is that the teams appreciate learning a little bit more online because you don't throw massive amounts of information at them all at one time. And you can
Mhm.
chunk it out a little bit and then teach them how to implement smaller sections and then perfect it. And then we can come back and see how's the accountability and what kind of KPIs measured because of that. So I think really they appreciate it. Plus, when you're working with larger teams, it is very expensive for a doctor to shut down an entire practice at a time and do an entire day training. So having smaller training sessions with more integrated work groups like your hygiene teams or your business teams at one time, that makes it a little bit easier on the pocketbook for the doctors.
Awesome. Okay, awesome then, Daniel. So if you could tell us a little bit about your past, your present, how'd you get to where you are today?
Ooh, that is a great question. Well, this year marks year 30 for me in
Wow.
dentistry.
Okay.
I know. I am having a little hard time saying that 3 decades in dentistry. It doesn't even seem right.
Mhm.
I started out in dentistry when I was 15 years old. I was just a little teeny tiny baby. But I think that helps me relate to the teams a lot because when I walk into a team and I start telling them about my background, I tell them that, I've held just about every position in a dental office myself.
Mhm.
So they understand that I've walked in their shoes and that I'm not going to make decisions for their team based upon something that I wouldn't do myself. So if I'm going to ask them to run a little faster, it's because I ran a little faster myself. Or if I ask them to have a conversation with the patient, or maybe they should slow down and be careful with the words that they choose with their patients, it's because I've found that those words mean a lot more with their patients too. So um, I I started out as the girl who did all of the sterilization with
Mhm.
the teams with the in the dental office. As I finished high school, I did 4 years of college working in a dental practice as a clinical assistant, and then I moved into CAD CAM dentistry. We were one of the first offices in Louisiana to have a CAD CAM machine, and that was back in 1998. So that was a really, really long time ago. And that's when I learned about my passion for teaching. I mastered that machine really quickly and began teaching other doctors in the area how to utilize that and started helping the local Patterson branch sell those machines. And from that particular office, I moved on to another practice where I switched and became an E4D trainer and started, moving into more of the business side of dentistry with office management and insurance utilization, hygiene retention, and just seeing the business part of it. So I was able to mesh those business and clinical systems together. And then moving past, when I retired from clinical dentistry, I moved into consulting, and that's where the growth really started happening. I've been consulting for about 10 years. I like to see those teams who are really, really hungry start to see results. And I think my mom should have named my middle name Results because it is so much fun to celebrate with the team and see what they want and see the results that they get and how they're able to implement some of the strategies that we put into place. And that's really where I am now is working with the larger teams. The smaller offices are fun, but they weren't necessarily a challenge for me. I like to grow large things. So moving from, going from a few practices to even more is great.
Mhm.
Or moving from a couple of doctors to a larger organization is fantastic. But I like to look for the opportunity, and then I like to get the team on board and see how that opportunity can help more patients. And ultimately, it's my mission every day when I put my feet on the floor to help someone. So I fall asleep at night knowing if I did that and I did it well, that I can sleep well at night. So,
Yeah, that's good. I like that. So then let's rewind a little bit. You became a consultant 10 years ago then, right?
yes.
10 years ago. And but then before that, you were kind of familiar with every single, or more than familiar, you were really, really well known in every single position, right?
Yes, I am not a hygienist and I'm not a dentist, but I have a lot of respect for both of those positions. And I work really well with making sure the team understands how everybody's position works together on a team.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. So then throughout this process, I know, for example, like I'm just speaking out of my own experience right here. When I remember one of the practices that I worked with, like I was in there, I was just the front office, and then they hired a consultant. What pushback do you see with that? Like sometimes there's a team member who's like, I've been here 50 years, like I know what I'm doing. And then you're like, but we haven't gone anywhere in 50 years, So like, what pushback do you see?
Oh, Michael, that was me. I worked in a practice where there was a consultant, and I was like, I've been in dentistry for 16 years. Who does she think she is going to teach me something?
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time that at the second day of our consultation, our 2-day consultation, I was all up on the desk going, tell me more, because she made it fun. She made it interesting for someone, even like me, who had been in dentistry for a long time. She taught me things that I didn't know, but she had to overcome my attitude and my pushback and all of those things. So I think that ultimately helped me as a consultant now overcome some of those teammates that I encounter. And you're right, they're out there. But I think being able to, number one, walk into an office and understand that this is their home. This is not my home that I'm
Mhm.
walking into. I am a guest in their house, and respecting that, first of all. That's one of the biggest keys. And then also understanding that not everything is broken in these offices. These offices are functioning. There are patients there, they're doing dentistry. It is not my job to walk in and say, you guys are horrible. It's my job to walk in and say, wow, look at what you've done. What do you think you could do even better? Because I can point out a whole lot of things that have gone wrong, but what does that do to people? It puts them immediately on the defense. And that's not where you get people to make changes. You get people to make changes by understanding that, hey, there is an opportunity. And so that's how I like to deal with it. First of all, I don't like to get pushback because that's
Mhm.
really hard to overcome. So I like to walk in and say, hey, I am your friend. I am here to help you. Let's dive into this together and see if there's anything that we can do to help our patients, because ultimately I'm very patient centered. That's how I think all of us should be. And
Mhm.
let's see if there's something that we can do to make our lives more efficient, if they're not, or more patient friendly. So I hope that that becomes something that the team can respect. With the success that I've had in the past, looks
Yeah.
like it's working pretty well.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So then how can a doctor know what's like the
Danya
pushback?
Montaya, FaceTime video. So sorry
No
about
worries.
that.
No worries. No worries, Danya. I was gonna ask, so how can the doctor know the type of pushback that's happening? You know what I mean? Like, for example, let's just say the doctor gets recommendation from you, right? The consultant.
Mhm.
And then you're like, you're telling the front office implement it, right? Or the hygienist implement it, or somebody implement it. But then they're saying like, oh, it's not working. What she's saying is not working. The team member, right? How can the doctor know who's right and who's wrong in that scenario?
Oh, I think KPIs are always, the numbers always tell the story
Mm-hmm.
about who's right and who's wrong. So we have to go back and we have to look at those numbers to identify what's happening. And you have to understand, what do you want those KPIs to look like? So if we have, let's just talk about broken appointments for
Yeah.
an example.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has broken appointments, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that we've got an office that has 100 broken appointments on average each month. And the doctor is kind of freaking out. That's very expensive to have a lot of broken appointments for a lot of reasons. That's very expensive. And we need to come together as a team and put some measures into place to stop that. Um, what I like to do is sit down with the team and kind of brainstorm. What do we need to do here to fix this? What's
Mm-hmm.
causing it? Find out from the beginning. It could be the fact that we're breaking things in the software the wrong way. It could be like there was an office at one point where, in order for the software to work correctly, and for their lab case manager software to work correctly, they had to create an appointment and then break the appointment and then not reschedule that appointment for them to be able to attach their lab cases to it. So the appointment was never really an appointment,
Mm-hmm.
but in our KPI management software, it showed that all of those appointments were being broken. So I think that what you have to do, as a consultant, is you have to look at the data and find out what's true data. And you have to rely on your team and be open-minded about it. And then you have to ask your team to be the exact same way with you. And we all know that there's going to be times where, we're going to have to bend both ways, and we're going to have to come up with a solution. Maybe that solution is, hey, let's talk with our patients in the back and let them know that we have a lot of free time on our hands and we've got to find a way to fill that. And one of those ways is to let the patient know how important their health is and what we're going to do at the next appointment in 6 months. So perhaps that will start to build value for that next 6-month appointment. And then we can start to see if that does change and move those KPIs to where we see less broken appointments instead of, continuing to see the same number. But what we have to remember, Michael, is that there's not just one fix to a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like we have to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F before we see an overall fix to a problem. So we can't just continue to, oh, here's the answer to this solution. It's an overall, lots of different things have to be happening in the right direction so we can see the results that we want to see.
Gotcha. So then what are some of the best, or what are like the most mandatory KPIs that we need to be relying on when it comes to trying to scale or grow the practice?
I think that a lot of doctors look at that. Oh, my new patient numbers. Oh, my new patient numbers. They have to be coming in the door. I almost say I don't care about new patient numbers because you're typically always going to get a new patient. I want to make sure that those new patients aren't leaving out that back door and that we're retaining those numbers. So retention is a very, very big number for me. I want to make sure that over an 18-month span that we are looking at our numbers to make certain that our numbers are continuously growing by the actual number of new patients you're gaining each month. that would tell you that your numbers of new patients are increasing, and we're also retaining the numbers of patients that are currently in the practice. So to me, those numbers are important.
Mhm.
Team members don't really care a lot about production and collection numbers. So, which is that's okay with me. They don't have a lot that they can do with those numbers. They can schedule to a goal, but things like that money is not necessarily going into that team member's pocket. And sometimes it creates animosity on the team if a consultant comes in and says, "Oh, we need to schedule to $20,000 a day." Well, that's a huge number. And that to me is kind of unrealistic to ask a team member to focus on a large number like that. So to me, I am more interested in creating goals or KPIs that are not related to large production numbers. I'm more interested in what can they do to help the practice out. Like, can we create goals that will keep patients from falling off the schedule?
Mhm.
Or can we create a goal that is going to keep patients from canceling the appointment, which is kind of the same thing? But how about our treatment acceptance? Or how about our outstanding insurance claim? Can we keep a goal to get those outstanding insurance claims down to what the practice, where they should be on a KPI level? If you look at the overall picture of your revenue cycle management,
Mhm.
what is actually owed to the practice, the amount that you're producing each month should be about what is owed to the practice. And if you're not there, then we really have to find ways and strategies to put into place so our team can get you there.
Mhm.
So some of those things are things that matter to team members, like how many claims can you close in a day or a week? What can we do to increase your ability to focus on those claims? And that matters to a team. How efficient can they be? Things like that help.
Gotcha. So then who should be worried? The doctor, right? The practice owner should be worried about like the collection, production type of, and the hygienist, right?
Absolutely. When you're talking about DSOs and you're talking about multiple levels, multiple practices, we kind of have to have an executive team that looks at that. So we've got our doctor owners that are looking at those numbers. Plus, a lot of times our practice managers or even our regional managers are looking at those. And those people are focusing on those higher level numbers. But our boots on the ground necessarily, we need to focus on our systems in the practice and making certain that each one of those systems is functioning to the highest of its ability at the right level of KPI, at the right, return in our KPI. And if it's not, then we need to figure out or teach them at this point what actions can they cause to make that KPI move in the direction that we need it to. That way,
Gotcha.
within another couple of months, our executive team will be able to see the trend and the movement that our boots on the ground was able to make.
Okay, I understand now. So this is specifically really for like the people because if it's like a small practice, like just the one practice, would you say like almost everybody kind of has to keep an eye on production and collect, like meaning like a team of like three, like 4 to like 7? Would it be like that or no?
It Every practice is a little different. Some doctors don't really want their team members to know that information,
Mhm.
just because it can skew how they talk to patients about treatment. I still want my team members to not look at those patients like a dollar sign. I want them to look at those patients like, you need this treatment because your tooth is cracked, not because I have a goal of getting $5,000 on the schedule today.
Yeah.
I still want my team members to remain wholesome and do dentistry for the right reasons. So it just kind of depends. But then there are some doctors who are very goal oriented and they're great leaders and they can translate that information to their teams and they can keep that culture patient centered. And if that's the
Mhm.
case, then by all means, let's move those team members forward. And those are typically the doctors that move forward into owning multiple locations.
Gotcha. Okay. So then, but at the same time, throughout this process, like you said, we also want to focus on the retention, right? Like retention rate. What are some of the best retention strategies that you utilize that you tell like practice owners to use, and then you see it like poof, skyrocket?
Uh, I don't ever ask a patient, do they want to come back?
Mhm.
I always go ahead and say things like, let's go ahead and schedule your next appointment. Um, and I am always going to make time in the schedule to work hygiene retention. It doesn't make sense to me for a team not to work hygiene retention because they are too busy. Because you know what? If you don't work hygiene retention and contact those patients that are outside of hygiene retention that are late for their appointments, you're going to find yourself without a lot of things to do. You're going to have a lot of holes in your schedule. So a couple of other strategies. I'm a big fan of if you have automated text messaging. I'm a big fan of asking your patients to confirm their appointment 2 weeks ahead of time. If they haven't confirmed that appointment 2 weeks ahead of time, then perhaps they're not going to show. And we have 2 weeks now that we can schedule that, we can call and ask them if they're going to be here. If they're not, then now I have 2 weeks that I can fill that schedule.
Mhm.
Another thing is if you're having problems with keeping your schedule full in hygiene, I also like to, when you've seen your hygiene patient and you're going to schedule them out 6 months, I like to schedule them out not 6 months and a couple of days like most hygienists do. I like to schedule them out 6 months and a couple of weeks or longer than that. That way, in case something happens and you have a lot of cancellations in your schedule, we are not concerned about pulling those patients forward and they are not eligible for those cleaning appointments. That's another great strategy to keep your schedule full. Also, patients, uh, even though I'm not a huge insurance fan, patients still are very dictated by insurance.
Mhm.
And if the insurance is not eligible, if patients are not eligible to come in because they don't have coverage, their coverage has been dropped, they aren't certain what their coverage is, they're just probably not going to show up. So if we can't verify their insurance ahead of time, even though it's not really our job, if we can't verify their insurance ahead of time, then we have got to contact those patients and find out if they're going to be here because it's most likely that they are going to fall off the schedule and we're going to be paying a hygienist to stand around and do nothing. And there's nothing worse than having your overhead skyrocket because you have a very highly paid hygienist standing around doing nothing. So
Mhm.
those are
Yeah.
some really, let's focus on those things and let's strategize ways that we can close those gaps.
Yeah. I want to kind of like dive a little bit deeper on the 2 week ahead of time call to confirm. What terminology can we use, or what's like the script for that to be like, hey, we need to know now, or your appointment's bye bye, right? Like, how do we know?
Well, I like to, on your text messaging, it's always great to say, we're preparing for your appointment. We've reserved your hour time. Our hygienist has prepared for your appointment. Can you confirm that you will be here? Just something very simple, letting them know that, hey, we've already taken the time to confirm. We've already planned for your appointment. Are you going to be here? That's it. And, it's very simple. If they're not, then they'll just cancel that appointment. Most of the, between Modento and Lighthouse and Solution Reach and all of those other text messaging softwares, all they have to do is press C for cancel, and that
Mhm.
appointment goes away. And then you see all of these empty holes. Well, I don't want to see empty holes on my schedule 2 days in advance. I want to see
Mhm.
2 weeks in advance. And then we need to have someone who can follow up with all of those patients who did cancel. So at the end of the month, all of those patients who dropped off of the schedule, it would be great if the office could appoint someone who works hygiene retention, someone who could reach out personally to those patients and say, look, hey, I see that you canceled your appointment. Does that mean that you've moved? Does that mean that you're not going to be coming here anymore? Do we need to inactivate you as a patient? Because we want to keep our active patient status type very, very tight. We don't need to have a lot of fake patients. I'm going to call them fake patients in your practice. We don't need to have a lot of fake patients in your practice, because then we're just elevating that level of active patient number in your practice without knowing, are those real patients that are going to be coming to your practice? Consultants like me make a lot of decisions based on those numbers. If we've got an extra room, do we build that room out? Do we hire an associate because we're getting to that point of, between 1,800 and 2,000 patients is about how much one single doctor and 2 hygienists can handle as far as
Mhm.
active patients. Well, if I see we're getting to 2,200 active patients, I'm going to be looking for an associate to come into the office. So if we're not inactivating some of those patients, then we really need to know if these are fake patients, are they coming back in or not? So
Right.
hygiene retention is super important. If you guys are not working hygiene retention and you need to know some strategies, then let's talk. Let's figure this out together so we can come up with some plans.
And I think that makes so much sense what you said, because like some people feel like they're afraid of hire an associate on too soon, right? And the numbers look like it's there, but when you're in the practice, you're like, it's not happening. Something's not right, you know?
There you go. Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's
Have you seen that before? Like your
yeah.
marketing?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
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 We've definitely seen that before, but at the same time, so then like, let me ask you, where do we start with this process? Like, let's just say right now somebody's listening to you and they're like, oh my God, we got to start figuring out who our fake patients are. Do we just start with today, day one, and be like, okay, let's start confirming from 2 weeks out? And then, people are dropping off and you're like, oh my gosh, my schedule's falling apart. Then what do we
Yeah.
do?
You have to start somewhere. So take a look at whatever software it is that you're utilizing and go back into your settings and see what kind of settings you have, and then do a 2 week out setting, and then your 2 day or 1 day, whichever it is, and then the morning of is what I prefer. That way, if they're gonna cancel that day, they're gonna cancel in the morning. But yeah,
Mhm.
start there and get those patients off the book 2 weeks in advance. You should never, ever, ever tell a patient that it's going to be longer than 2 weeks before I can see you for a hygiene appointment, right? Who wants to be told it's going to be longer than that?
Mhm.
So, and I promise you, Michael, there should not be a dental office in the United States that is going to take longer than 2 weeks to get in to have their teeth cleaned. That's just silly. Oh, we don't have a hygiene appointment for 4 months. Why not?
Yeah.
Like, what are you not paying attention to in your practice? That, like, does your doctor know that? Because don't you think he would be disappointed in you if your schedule was that full that you didn't have a hygiene appointment for 4 months? That's silly. Like, that's silly.
Mhm.
So yes, start there. Just start today. Today is the beginning of the month. Let's start confirming people for 2 weeks and change the setting. If they're not confirmed, then let's just see. Let's touch base with them. We are prepared for your appointments. How are you? Can we count on you to be here? And if not, then let's start moving people into those spots who will be here. Can you imagine? Just do the math in your head, okay? A hygiene appointment, let's just round it up and say Okay, let's just go cheap and say we're PPO, and
Mhm.
it's $100 for a hygiene appointment. And let's say we save one hygiene appointment per day, and we have two hygienists. That's $200 per day. We work 4 days a week. Is that $800 that
Mhm.
we just saved that 1 week?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, over the lifespan of this, can you imagine exponentially what we can save because we just changed our confirmation process?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
And,
gonna be
and
really good.
you know, then we can talk about dropping a few insurance companies and actually going fee for service. Then we can talk about how we can triple that number of 100 and get what we actually deserve to be paid for this.
Yeah. No, that'll be really, really good. So then, okay, I like this. So then let me ask you a question, kind of like transitioning, I guess viewpoints here or topics. Y- I feel like you do a lot of things, Daniel, right? Like great. What would you say is your main area of expertise?
Looking for opportunity, finding the opportunity in a practice, and then deploying a plan with the team and execution. So you don't get to have 30 years of experience and not realize how to grow a team, how to
Mhm.
grow a business, how to run it efficiently, and how to make money. Um, I think that's probably my area of expertise. Now, that's a 30,000-foot view. If you want to dive down to where, okay, now we've jumped out of the plane and we've pulled the parachute, we're sailing around, working on our opportunity. Probably one of my favorite things is dropping PPOs because I hate insurance companies.
Yeah.
I'm pretty well known for how to get off of an insurance company and how to do it successfully without killing your practice, without driving away all of your patients, and turning that into a huge opportunity for your practice. And my probably one of my biggest passions is treatment acceptance with your patients. A no pressure treatment acceptance with your patients. Being a clinical assistant for so many years, I had an opportunity to work side by side with my doctor and my patients,
Mhm.
and seeing, all of those patients accept treatment because of how I would structure my conversations, or because of how I would present treatment to those patients in an honest way, with no pressure, no sales tactics. Being able to teach my teams that has been very, very successful. So, you know, going back, looking for opportunity, and then finding, yeah, I don't look for low hanging fruit. The doctors that I work with, they already figured that out.
Yeah.
So that doesn't exist. Those words don't even ever come out of my mouth. The doctors that come work with me, they've already done all the easy work, and they leave the hard work for me. And what I do is I put a plan together for the doctors, and then we deploy these plans amongst all of their offices, and then we start to scale. So we like to make kind of a flagship office and get our executive team together,
Mhm.
and once we have our management and our executive team together, we begin building and delegating all of our systems in a way that work amongst the other systems in the practice. And then we can move them forward to either other locations that they've already purchased, or we move into purchasing or building additional locations.
Gotcha. Okay. What would you say is the most hidden, not so much the most common, but like the most hidden opportunity that is being missed?
Ooh, hidden opportunity that's being missed.
Like almost where when you do your evaluation for a practice, you see it and you get excited because you're like, I know once you see this, you're going to be like, oh, why didn't I see it? you know?
Oh gosh. Um, where does the list start? I mean, every practice has so many different ones sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, I did a due diligence for a practice a couple of weeks ago, and the selling doctor was asking for $1.2 million
Mhm.
for his practice, and it was he was asking for too much, but it didn't matter to me that he was asking too much because I easily came up with how we could turn that into a $3 million practice within 1 year. And, there were, that was an easy opportunity. Um, some of the things that I, I get excited about are seeing how we can build out and how we can change the scheduling around. I think some of those things are are easier to look at from a strategic point of view, where some of the doctors they just can't see it. So
Mhm.
to me, that's where I get excited. I'm like, if we could just tweak this right here, your day is going to go smoother, and we're going to have more opportunity to spend time with your patients, which is what every single patient wants, is to have their doctors for a little bit more time. But then we're also going to be able to provide better dentistry for the patients. And that's really what I want to do.
So then, like when it comes to that example right there, what is bad scheduling versus good scheduling, or what did you specifically tweak in that scenario?
Have you ever seen roller skates in an office?
No.
um, there, there's a lot of offices that they're working assisted hygiene, and the model of assisted hygiene that they're working has not been explained to them appropriately, where they feel like it is just bounce, 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 back and forth all day long. And the patient feels like a number. And that's not necessarily helping with their overall health, or, it's not making them feel like they are receiving the care that they need. And I was actually with a practice a few months ago where they were doing this particular type of assisted hygiene. And I hope Rachel Wall gets to hear this because I haven't spoken to her about this yet. But um, this particular practice was interested in um, learning how to code SRPs a certain way with their health insurance, because they were already coding it with their dental insurance, but they needed additional SRPs within a year. Okay, within a year,
Hmm.
because the patient didn't have enough time, well, with the hygienist for correct treatment. But then, they didn't hear home care instructions. They didn't hear about their 4910, their periodontal maintenance instructions and coming back and things like this. And because insurance will only pay for um, the periodontal therapy, the
Mhm.
scaling and root planing once every 2 years, this practice was looking for maybe a loophole or so to get the medical insurance to pay for it. So, I was like, oh, goodness gracious, we have to fix some of these things. So, maybe that was a production booster for them, but it didn't feel right for me. And I had to bring things like that to the attention of the doctor, that maybe sometimes if we could slow down a little bit and not do assisted hygiene so quickly, that we could do actually a better service for our patient, which is in turn, if you think about it, it's going to increase our treatment acceptance with the patient, because if they're seeing results and if they're seeing that they're healthier from that scaling and root planing, then they're probably going to move forward with all of the treatment recommendations from the doctor.
That's so true. Yeah. I think a lot of the times we need a slow down to create more intentionally. when
Yeah.
it comes to a lot of these things. That's good. That's good
Yeah.
to know. Okay. So then what what can a dentist or practice owner do today to improve their business? So if I were to ask you that and be like, just give me something I can do this week that I know by the end of this month, well, pretty much, yeah, because of March, um, we'll get we'll see a needle move. We'll get something done.
All right. I'm going to give you two answers. And while you were asking me this, I was thinking to myself, oh, he's not going to like the first one because these doctors, they don't like to hear me say this first one. And I'm going to give a shout out to my great friend, Dr. Mark Hyman, because this is one of Dr. Mark Hyman's favorite things to say,
Mhm.
but listen. These doctors need to listen. And so if they would just ask the right questions and listen to their patients will tell them exactly what they want. All right. So
Mhm.
that's going to be my first word of advice. But I got to tell you, these doctors, unless they have a coach screaming down their neck like me, they have a hard time listening. So I'll put that little gem out there. But
Mhm.
if you guys could just listen to your patients and sit down and ask more questions of your patients, tell me, what do you want? How can I help you? Is this what you would like for me to do for you? Those questions are invaluable. They are giving you the answers, and all you have to do is do what they say, and it's just priceless.
Mhm.
But that's not going to suffice for everybody. So my second piece of advice would be to take 3 or 4 KPIs that you are not learning about, that you are not monitoring, and dive deep into those with your team and watch them. And it takes 3 months for you to be able to see a trend with your KPI movements. So watch those trends for at least 3 months and see if there is any sort of a trend that you can notice with those KPIs, and then start introducing them to your team and see if you can get that KPI to move because of a different behavior you asked your team to do. So, whether that is reducing broken appointments or increasing, I hate to say increasing treatment acceptance because you cannot, there's just not a software out there that's been developed well enough to monitor treatment acceptance. It's more of
Mhm.
a hand type of a, check mark type of thing.
Mhm.
But if you can ask your team, to schedule every hygiene patient back for their 6-month evaluation
Mhm.
and see that KPI move over the next 3 months, that is going to make a big difference in the retention of your practice and ultimately in the profitability of your practice. So those would be some of my
Gotcha.
little gems.
Yeah, I like that. So the 3, 4, it could be like, okay, I want to make sure I want to keep an eye on the no shows, right? Then the retention rate. Then let's just say, um, I don't know, hygiene production, things like that, right? It could be the
Yeah.
KPIs.
Mhm.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then dive deep. And every single like quarter, would you say we pick a new three, or no?
I have about 25 that I go over with my doctors every month. I don't change them. I have the same ones every month. But as you're growing, as you're learning about these KPIs, if you want to pick a new one each month and add it to it.
Yeah.
But if you're not using some sort of a dashboard to monitor your KPIs, I would definitely recommend it. Nobody wants to sit here and pull old timey reports anymore. And
Yeah.
there's lots of dashboards that we can use to monitor all of your KPIs and the movement, and you just log into them and see where they are, and it makes life so much easier. So that's what I would recommend. That's
Yeah.
probably what I would recommend.
Man, 25 KPIs to like review every month is
That's
a lot of
nothing. That's just what I go over with the doctors.
really. Wow. So it's like a lot of
uh,
stats.
I'm let's just, I'll admit it, I'm a dental dork. I probably watch about 100 KPIs on each practice. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to know what every single doctor is doing. You've got to know what every practice is doing. You've got to know, you have to know everything from insurance to patient payments to scheduling to, I,
Hmm.
I mean, we don't have enough time, Michael.
We don't have enough time. But that's really good. That's really good to know. Like, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, oh, we're keeping too much data, and then
Nope,
sometimes
never.
it's sometimes it's like the opposite, right? We're not keeping enough data, so like we need to continue to add to move it. Okay.
25 is about right. If anybody wants to know what I'm looking at, I'm always available to do a complimentary analysis with them and sit down and chat with them, and I'll talk with anybody, and
Yeah.
we can see what's happening in their practice and go from there.
Nice. Okay, awesome. So now these next questions are just to get into the head of someone who isn't totally involved in the clinical side of dentistry.
Okay.
Uh, what would you like to see more from a practice owners? From all the practices you've worked with, actually more from a dentist, right? So from everybody
Dentist.
you've worked with, what would you like to see more
Clarity to their team.
of? Clarity.
Mhm.
Can you expand a little bit more on what you mean?
Yeah, a lot of times, it's well, did you want to know? Let me ask some clarifying questions here. You said that you wanted to know, like, from a non-clinical person's.
Yeah, so like we're not like in, working every day, taking out, you know what I mean, working on teeth or anything like that. We're more like in the business side, right? Like especially you're like more really deep in the business side. So what would you like to see more, right, from a dentist, not being a DDS?
Yeah. Um, I, I want to see them communicate more. I want to see them actually dive in a little bit deeper and get into their brain a little bit more so they can provide that clarity for everyone else around them, because if they don't, then we're making it up. You're making it up, right? I mean, how many times have you felt like that? Like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing for this guy.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I don't either. So I have to stop and ask a lot of questions. Am I on the right page? Like, or is this what you want? I don't want to do that. I want to be one on one. I want to be in the mind, and things work faster if we know exactly what they want and they provide us with a lot of clarity. So sit
Gotcha.
down, get up in your feelings every now and then, turn off the
Mhm.
radio on the way home, quit texting back, put your phones down, and think about your practice and how many lives you affect. And if you had just a little bit more clarity with everyone else, what would that mean for your practice?
Yeah, just a little like clarity is different than transparency, right? Like not so much
Oh,
like,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's more
Yes.
like being crystal clear on like what you want instead of like
Yes.
just letting everything out.
Yes. I don't need for them to let the cat out of the bag.
Okay.
Transparency is sometimes that's too much information, but clarity is, I want my team to be excellent at this. I want my patients to be treated like this. These are all of my desires for my practice. This is how I want my business to be run. This is how I want my patients to be treated. This is, that's what the team, like, it's almost like expectations. Clarity and expectations are kind of the same thing. People talk about transparency like they're trying to let you in on their little secrets. I
Mhm.
don't need to know your secrets. I want to know, what do you expect of me and your team? Because I'm not going to do anything with your secrets, but you're expecting me as your consultant to perform. And one of those performances requires me making money for you.
Mhm.
Well, being transparent with me doesn't help me make money for you. But if you expect me to provide coaching one-on-one to this particular work group and this particular work group at the same time, and they are not congruent,
Mhm.
or you expect me not to fire somebody when they don't even show up for work for 2 weeks, we have problems. Like that is not going to be I'm just being very like obnoxious here.
Yeah.
A doctor is not going to do that if they abandon their job. But I want to make sure that I have clarity for expectations from a doctor. That is what I need.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then next question is, what right now do you hate about dentistry, or just really dislike?
That is such a tricky question.
Yeah.
I could turn it around and ask you and just completely avoid the question.
I'm gonna be
Uh,
like, oh, when people avoid questions, that's what I don't like about it.
um, I I really I really like I really hate the fact that we had to go through COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and it put such a strain on all of these doctors because I saw so many doctors go through mental anguish,
Mm-hmm.
and that that didn't make me happy. Um, I've had I've had doctors. Dentistry is a very stressful situation anyway. I don't know why we make it so stressful because I feel like it should just be fun, but it's not. It's not always fun. It is a
Mm-hmm.
stressful situation, but I think the COVID situation and shutting our practices down for at least 6 weeks and then coming back and only doing hygiene and dealing with the PPP situation and letting our teams go and then not having enough team members on board and the constant rehiring of people and the revolving doors and just COVID. I hate the fact that dentistry has had to deal with COVID and a lot of the fact that we didn't get the respect from the medical field or from the government that I felt like we should have when we were dealing with COVID. It kind of really made me angry. And I don't ever want us to go through that again. So I'm going to ask all of your listeners and anyone else who is of importance out there that if we ever get into that situation again, we all have to come together and rally that dentistry is essential and nobody should be able to tell us that it's not. Um, we're talking about, the mouth, we're talking about the beginning of the body here. And if you can't say that that's not essential, then you just don't have enough education. And I'll be the first one standing up for all of our doctors saying, we're not shutting down again. So, what do I hate? COVID. I hate
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah. That's a good answer. Yeah, that was really, really good one. I like that. No, but you're absolutely right, man. That I know a lot of people who had to let go of their startups, their practices in that time, right? As soon as they started, Daniel, like it wasn't even like, oh, I've been practicing for 80. No, it's like I just graduated, got my own practice. Oh my gosh, I can't, PPP doesn't make sense because I just opened up a month ago and now I have my own business. It doesn't give me any money. Gotta let everybody go.
You just
Yeah.
made my stomach turn again, and I have chills all over again. It's just I I just yeah. Let's talk
Yeah.
about something happy. I can't do it anymore.
Okay. So then what do you love about dentistry right now?
Helping people. I love helping team members. I love helping patients. I'll walk into any dental office across the country and I'll answer the phone. I don't even apologize for it. If the phone is ringing, I will answer it. If, if there's something I can do to help a patient, I will do it. I love helping people. It's my passion. I told you earlier, it's why I put my feet on the floor. If I help somebody today in dentistry, if I educate them, I feel good. And it's all I know, Michael. It's all I know. I have 30 years in this. And
Mhm.
I light up. I talk about dentistry everywhere. I want to make sure that everybody who works in dentistry is successful. And that means team members, doctors, associates, practices, organizations, associations. I want everyone to be successful. And I don't need any credit for that. That's not what this is all about. I just want to make sure that patients get the best part of us and that I can go out there and educate as many people as possible.
Awesome, Daniel. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. But before we say goodbye, can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can. You can go to my website. It is dso-success.com. You can go to that website. I'm also on Facebook at the same, LinkedIn, Instagram. My email is danya@dso-success.com. Any one of those channels, I'm there. And I know if you contact Michael, you can always reach out to him and he'll get you in touch with me too. So, Michael, I want to really thank you for reaching out to me to be a guest on your podcast. This was a blast. You're so much fun to talk with, and I appreciate your time.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And guys, that's all going to be in the show notes below. So if you want to reach out to Danya and pick her brain more, or schedule one of the consultations, please feel free to do so. And Danya, thank you so much for being with us. It was a pleasure, and we'll hear from you
Yeah.
soon.
All right. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.